The quiet house among the lights. Somewhere between noisy roads and old trees, there stood a small house. It was not special from the outside. Simple walls, a neat roof, and one large window from which a soft light flowed every evening. No one knew exactly how old the house was, but everyone who passed by felt the same thing. It became calmer near it. A girl named Ellie lived in this house. She did not like rushing. She believed that every minute had its own rhythm, and if you did not hurry it, life became softer. Every morning Ellie opened the window and looked at the street for a long time. She watched the city wake up. How the first cars slowly passed by. How birds sat on the wires and quietly talked to each other. After that, she put on the kettle and chose to based on her mood. Sometimes chamomile. Sometimes vanilla. Sometimes just warm water with honey. Ellie believed that drinks could listen too. The house was always clean, but not perfect. A book lay forgotten on the sofa. A mug stood somewhere with steam still rising. Everything looked as if life here moved slowly and honestly. Ellie did not have a television, but she had shelves of books, a box of pencils, and an old record player that sometimes softly crackled before playing music. But most of all, Ellie loved evenings. When the sun began to hide behind the houses, she turned on a small lamp near the window. The light was warm and yellow, as if a tiny star lived inside the lamp. She sat at the table, opened her sketchbook, and took out her pencils. Sometimes she knew what she would draw. Sometimes she simply let her hand lead the line where it wanted. Small houses appeared on the pages. Trees. Windows with lights. Cats sleeping on rooftops. Moons that looked too big for the sky. Ellie did not show her drawings to anyone. They were only for her. Like little letters to herself. At such moments, her cat always appeared nearby. His name was Mist. He was grey, fluffy, and a little lazy. Mist liked to jump onto the table, curl up, and quietly purr. Sometimes it seemed that he understood everything Ellie felt. If she was sad, he lay closer. If she smiled, he slowly waved his tail. If she closed her eyes, he froze, as if guarding her sleep. Ellie often said to Mist, "I'm glad I have you." Mist usually answered only with purring. But that was enough. Outside the window, lights slowly began to turn on. One by one. As if the city was also drawing its own picture. Ellie sometimes wondered. How many people were sitting in their homes right now and feeling tired? How many people dreamed of silence? How many were looking for a place where they could simply be? She believed that every person deserved their own small light. One evening, when rain softly tapped against the glass, Ellie noticed something strange. Another small light appeared in her window's reflection. But there were no houses across the street. She squinted. Looked more carefully. The light reflected as if somewhere in the darkness stood another small house. Ellie felt a gentle excitement. Not fear. Curiosity. She put on a warm sweater, took an umbrella, and quietly went outside. The rain was warm and calm. The asphalt shone like a mirror. Ellie walked toward where she thought the light was coming from. Step by step. And the farther she went, the quieter everything became. As if the city was slowly dissolving. Soon she saw it. A small house. It looked like her own. Only a little older. And the light in the window was even softer. Ellie stopped. Her heart beat calmly, but a little faster than usual. She felt that this house was waiting for her. Ellie slowly came closer. The path to the house was narrow and slightly overgrown with grass, as if people rarely walked there. but the light in the window was still burning. Not bright. Not blinding. But the kind of light that made you want to exhale. Ellie stopped at the gate. It was old, wooden, with slightly peeling paint. She carefully touched it with her hand. The gate softly creaked and opened by itself. Strange, Ellie whispered. But inside, there was no fear. Only a feeling as if she had come to a place she had already been before. She walked up to the door. The door was slightly open. Warm air slowly flowed out, bringing with it the smell of tea, wood, and something very familiar. Ellie knocked. Silence. She knocked again. Then the door slowly opened wider. Inside was quiet. Very quiet. There was a table, a lamp, shelves with books, a chair by the window, and an old rug on the floor. Everything looked simple. But everything seemed to hold memories. Ellie stepped inside. The door behind her softly closed by itself. She looked around. 2 cups stood on the table. One empty. The other with warm tea. Who lives here? Ellie quietly asked. No one answered. But Ellie suddenly felt that she was allowed to stay. She took off her umbrella, placed it by the door, and walked to the table. The tea was still warm. Ellie carefully took the cup in her hands. At that moment, images began to appear in her mind. As if someone was opening an old album. She saw a girl sitting at the same table. A girl who was drawing. A girl who often looked out the window. A girl who felt lonely. Ellie gasped. Is that me? The room seemed to quietly sigh. The images continued. Ellie saw herself at different ages. Small. A teenager. An adult. In all those moments, someone was not always beside her. But there was always light. There was always silence. There was always a place where she could hide from the noise. Ellie understood. This house was not quite real. It existed between thoughts. Between memories. Between who we were and who we became. A house for those who once needed warmth very badly. Ellie sat down in the chair by the window. It was surprisingly comfortable. As if it had been made especially for her. She closed her eyes. And she heard a quiet voice. Not with her ears. But inside herself. You are doing well. Ellie felt tears rise to her throat. She had spent so many years trying to be strong. So many years thinking she was not doing enough. And now someone was simply telling her that she was enough. The voice continued. You have the right to be tired. You have the right to rest. You have the right to be gentle. Ellie slowly exhaled. As if part of the heaviness disappeared. Suddenly, a cat appeared next to the chair. Exactly like Mist. Grey. Fluffy. He jumped onto her lap and began to purr. Ellie smiled through tears. Of course, she whispered. Even here, you are with me. The cat looked at her with calm eyes. And Ellie suddenly understood one more thing. This house was not only hers. It existed for everyone who had ever felt lost. Anyone who needed silence could one day find their way here. The house did not appear on a map. It appeared inside. Ellie sat in the chair for a long time. She did not know how much time passed. There were no clocks here. There was no need to hurry. At some point, Ellie felt that it was time to return. She stood up. She stroked the cat. She placed the cup back on the table. And quietly said, Thank you. The lamp softly flickered. As if answering. Ellie walked to the door. Opened it. And once again found herself on her quiet street. The rain had stopped. The air was fresh. Her house stood in the same place. The light in the window was still on. Ellie looked back. Where the strange house had been, there was now only a dark street, as if nothing had ever existed there. But inside Ellie, it was warmer than before. She went into her house. Mist met her at the door. She picked him up, sat at the table, opened her sketchbook, and for the first time in a long while, she did not draw just a house. She drew the light inside herself.